Mr. President, I want to rise to just offer some thoughts on the colloquy we've just heard from the majority leader and from our leader. And I want to say a word about process, and I want to say a word about partisanship. But let me start with a word to all of my colleagues. I respect your position on this deal, however you voted. I'm not here to stand and name call or chastise anybody who reaches a different position on this bill than I do, because it's a hard matter. And I don't think we serve the body well by challenging folks who reach a different position. Let me say a word about process. The allegation has been made on the floor in recent days that this vote, including the vote that was just taken, was somehow a procedural blocking of a vote on the deal. That's just not the case. I was one of the co-authors of the Review Act that is currently before us. And as we worked on the act in the Foreign Relations Committee, everyone understood that it would take 60 votes to pass either a motion of approval or disapproval. We worked on the act in January or February, months before a framework was on the table. Democrats wanted a 60-vote threshold for a motion of disapproval, but Republicans wanted a 60-vote threshold for a motion of approval. And that was the understanding of everyone in the committee when we cast a 19-0 vote to pass this in early April. And it was clearly understood when we passed a 98-1 vote on the floor of this body. The 60-vote threshold was understood, and it was so clearly understood that that's the way we do things around here, that 47 members of the Senate put that in a letter to the leaders of Iran. So this is not an unusual thing to ask for a 60-vote threshold. And in fact, the Democrats have asked twice in the last 3 days, let's have an up or down vote on the motion of disapproval with a 60-vote threshold, and our request for a vote on the merits has been twice blocked by the majority. I hope we'll have a chance to vote on the merits again next week under the 60-vote threshold that we all agreed to. But regardless of whether we do or whether we don't, this is a completely transparent vote because all 100 members of the Senate have indicated what their position is. I respect everybody's position, but it's very clear, and the clear rule is under the Review Act that we just passed, by this vote, this deal will now go forward as we agreed it would a few months back. Partisanship. The majority leader suggested that the position that's being taken on this side of the aisle is just to protect the president. I find that insulting. That's basically saying that on this side of the aisle, my colleagues didn't do the work to dig into the deal. So let me just say a word about my colleagues in the minority in this body. This deal was announced on the 15th of July. Did anyone on this side of the aisle run out and take a position on the deal within hours after it was out? Did anyone on this side of the aisle say, yes, I know what I'm going to do, and I haven't even read the bill? Has this side of the aisle in lockstep all taken exactly the same position with respect to this bill? No. On this side of the aisle, we haven't approached it in a partisan way. On this side of the aisle, every member took the time to master the details and make their own decision. Some announced their decision a few days after the deal was announced. Some announced their decision 7 weeks after the deal was announced. On this side of the aisle, there is a difference of opinion. 42 of us support the deal. 4 of us do not support the deal. But we respect each other's opinions, and we've approached it as a matter of conscience. So I categorically reject the statement and the implication by the majority leader that this is just something over here that's being done casually to protect the president. And I would ask my colleagues in the majority, compare the diversity of opinion and the time it took to reach an opinion and the respect that we have for each other's position. Compare that on this side of the aisle with your own track record on this bill, with the speed with which people announced that they were opposing it, some even admitting they were opposing it before they read it. And contrary to the claim of the majority leader that there's no support, no bipartisan support for this deal, I got to say, Senator John Warner, Republican, 36-year member of the Senate, chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee, wrote with Senator Carl Levin, former chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee, why Hawks should support the Iran deal. Brent Scowcroft, National Security Advisor for 2 Republican presidents, and general, strongly supports this deal. General Colin Powell, Republican Secretary of State, strongly supports this deal. There is bipartisan support for this deal. It's just that in this body, the minority has been willing to have differences of opinion and respect those differences and not approach this in a partisan matter. That's not exactly the case with respect to the other side. I applaud my colleagues for treating this as a matter of conscience, for reaching the conclusions they reached, even differences of opinion, and respecting each other's views. Under the terms of the Review Act, as we agreed to it, we have now taken a vote, and unless the majority will allow us to have a vote on the merits pursuant to the 60-vote threshold, this vote will stand and the deal will go forward. I hope we can vote on the merits. I hope the majority will agree to let us do what we agreed to do when we passed the Review Act just a couple of months ago. With that, Mr. Chair, Mr. President, I yield the floor.